Hello there. This is episode 2 of My First Job, the podcast. And this time we're looking at careers in the healthcare BPO industry. We have with us a guest who's learnt the ropes and risen to the very top. Gautam Sivaraman is Chief Delivery Officer of Access Healthcare, and he knows what it means to build a career and handle the pressure that is there practically every day in the industry. Over to Gautam.
Thank you, Venu. And all began 32 years ago for me, the first job.
Okay.
And in my current job, I have about 10,000 plus in between India and.
Wow.
So
Okay.
going back, so it was June, July 1990. That's when I had passed out with a distinction in chemical engineering. Was in a dilemma whether to look for a job or do some post graduation. I wanted to do MBA as well, but I started applying without really delaying too much because there's only a small window that's available for applications sent. And the
And all of
first,
these were written applications, right?
all of these were written. You had to actually handwrite and then send it as a post or a courier. That's what. There were no emails at that time. So we received a call letter. Again, it came as a proper registered post from Tata Chemical. Very elated to receive that. So this was going to be my first journey to the western side of the country. Always been only to the north, so I figured that the only way to reach Mithapur is to first go to Mumbai, and then from there used to be Bombay then, and from there take another train about 7-8 hours of layover in Bombay. So I had a classmate in Bombay who picked me up the morning that I reached, went to his house, and then evening the train was from Mumbai Central at about 8:15. So we reached the station well in time, maybe 7:30, 7:40. The rake was already in. I still remember the coach S6, berth number 5.
Oh, it's a great memory.
Yeah, because I'll tell you why I remember all that, right? So, and then the rake had already come in. There were a few people sitting. There's still about half an hour for the train to leave. So went quickly inside, kept my bags under the berth, came out to wish him goodbye. We were there for about 5 minutes outside. And then he left. I went in, and lo and behold, my bag was missing. There were two bags,
Oh.
one airbag and one suitcase. So the suitcase went missing.
Wow.
I looked around, couldn't find it. By then, we had all the passengers come in. The train was ready to leave. With the help of some co-passengers, we filed a complaint with the station. But I knew it was gone. Basically, whatever was there in the bag was gone. Unfortunately, the bag had my interview call letter, some cash, some new clothes, shoes that I bought for the interview, and all my original certificates.
My God, what a start.
So this is all gone. So I was like too much of a shock for me to bear. And by night I had high temperature, but still went on since I luckily had the ticket with me. And there was this bag that I had. Again, I need to thank my father for it. As he would always say, you have to de-risk everything. Do not keep everything in one basket. Make sure you at least carry some cash, some clothes in another bag, even if you're traveling. So that helped. I had this bag with me. So I eventually managed to stay through the journey, reached this destination next day evening, 4 o'clock. So I started from Mumbai at 8 p.m., reached at 4 p.m. the next day. It's a pretty long journey, almost 18 hours. So I had an accommodation at their guest house. The first look and feel of the place itself I was awestruck by it. There's a huge factory that was there. You couldn't miss it. That was the only thing that was there in that place. There were townships and people in and around the factory. So once that was done, I went to the guest house, checked in, actually wondering what else to do, right? Because I don't have the interview call letter. I was not sure whether I'll be called in for the interview. So I looked through the telephone directory, found a few South Indian names there who were pretty high up in the hierarchy there. So I checked with the receptionist, found out where they stayed, and went to meet them. I got a very good reception. I was received warmly, given South Indian coffee, and assured that things will all be okay, and I will be allowed to attend the interview. I will be given time, if selected, to go back to the college and get my duplicate certificate.
Okay.
So all that worked out well. The next day was the interview. I did well. Obviously got the job. I went to the college, got the duplicate certificates, and joined this organization, Tata Chemicals, in October 1990.
Okay.
That's when my first job started. So obviously this is a rude beginning to my career, right? As you rightly said, very rocky beginning, but I was able to withstand and resilient enough to still manage it. So good induction into the organization. And what I was not prepared for is a huge workforce that I had to manage in my, and the only languages I knew were Hindi, English, and Tamil. And this is a typical Kathiawad Gujarati group that I had there that I
A
had to manage.
dialect.
Yeah, so the complete
Okay.
dialect, everything was different. And obviously, there was this blue collar, white collar divide in that organization as well, just like any other organization. There was this, oh, bada saab aa gaya office mein, engineering karke, isko kya malum hai, and all that. So they were like, this guy is just come in fresh, and I'm here for 20 plus years, and he's now going to be my boss. So one of the first takeaways from that exposure, obviously, I was not spoon fed on the process. I was just thrown into the fire. I had to learn it the hard way.
How did
Just
you
like
get
any.
over the language thing?
So luckily, since I knew Hindi, I was able to manage to start with. But I knew that if you have to get the job done, I think those are the first management lessons, right? For me, one, you have to get down to the brass tacks, roll up your sleeves to understand the process. For me, there was no choice. I had to do that. I had to literally go down to the brass tacks, and this is a huge chemical plant, mind you. So right from every valve to every joint to every storage tank, I had to know what was in it and how the pipelines lead, where they go from one process station to the other process. Since I had to file maintenance reports as well, so I had to know in and out of all the pipelines, the joints, the valves. I had to know them by name. So nothing better than actually learning it on the ground with the people who manage it. So that's where I started. I had to get an emotional connect with the people. Obviously, Gujarati is a very sweet language. Everyone suddenly becomes your brother, right? Bhai, Gautam Bhai, Venu Bhai, everyone becomes your brother. So
Yeah.
that itself adds a lot of respect to the way you address people. And all of them were pretty old. Some of them were as old as my father as well. I treated them with respect and got along very well with them. Within 3 months, I was speaking very fluent Gujarati, picked up from them their slang and all that. So it was a successful tenure with Tata
So
Chemicals.
that would have been a very important part of building bridges, right? Of speaking to them in their language, actually admitting that getting along with them would be one of the most important parts, rather
Absolutely.
than create a divide between who you were, like you said, bada saab aa gaya, versus being close to them in
Yeah,
several ways.
some of my colleagues did not like me for that because obviously I used to go sit with them, eat with them. I wasn't either, so every day was at a different workstation. One day at
Okay.
this workstation, and my whole one walk used to be about a kilometer and a half, one
Okay.
round of the entire plant. So I used to take about 3-4 rounds. Great fitness exercise as well, right? And I had to
Which you
climb a
continue to this day.
I had to
Yeah.
climb huge storage tanks, check the top. So it was a completely different learning, and almost 60-70% of those people wept when I left in 1996. So it was a 6 year tenure. By the time I was ready to leave, obviously I wanted change. I was almost retired in Tata Chemicals. The township really makes you lazy. You don't have to do anything. Everything was available at the beck and call. Everything was cheap. People were great. So I could have retired there. But then obviously I had aspirations. I wanted to challenge the status quo. I wanted to get out of the comfort zone. Plus, my parents were alone. My sister had to be married off, or she was married while I was there. Things had to settle at home as well. I wanted to come back. 4 years of engineering, 6 years at Tata. I was away from home for 10 years, come back as well.
Okay.
So that was a very heart-rending departure from there. And I moved on.
And then to Chennai, you came into Chennai from
Yeah,
there?
so I came into Chennai. I joined an organization called Kothari Petrochemicals. They're part of the Kothari group. So they
Okay.
were setting up a similar kind of a chemical plant in Karaikal.
Okay.
So I joined their project office as a project engineer. Given the fact that I had the experience of having built or being part of the team that built a similar new plant from scratch. So right from buying equipment, testing them, managing the installation of the equipment, actually conducting a dry run and commissioning the plant. That was a great experience. Initial months were spent with the purchase team, having negotiations with various vendors. Then later on, visited the workshops to actually inspect the equipment before they be shipped. And then, of course, the installation and all that. So I was there with them for about 2 years. so 96 to
And
98.
is there a point of difference between the cultures? Obviously, Tata is one of the older names and very well known. So,
Yes,
was there something that you?
market difference, right? So
Okay,
obviously, most of the people here were educated.
okay,
So when I say educated, there were some horns that all of them had. The only difference between here and there was in Tata Chemicals, you could hardly find anyone who's beyond fifth or sixth standard from a education. But they had a
okay,
wealth of experience, and all you had to do was connect with them emotionally, and they will just pour out whatever they knew. But here, I could see there is some hesitation in sharing knowledge. They all came from very good organizations with great backgrounds, but I could see the difference. Like you rightly said, I could see the difference in temperament, attitude. Not that it bothered me. I continued the same way that I continued in Tata Chem. Just that I didn't want the plan to work. So they offered me, after the project was all initiated, there's no real work in the project office. So they wanted me to go to the plant in Karaikal, relocate. And all. I said, no. If the intent was to
okay,
stay in Chennai, so I'm not going to Karaikal. So I came back. Uh, I actually worked as a consultant thereafter for about a year,
okay,
given the fact that I had this commissioning experience and all that. So as I joined a friend who already had a consulting firm, and we used to liaise with equipment manufacturers and support them for erection and maintenance and all that. So through that is when my passport got the first stamping. So I managed to fly out of the country, went to Malaysia, Singapore. So that was my first outside the country visit. Around
and
19,
from there to yeah, okay,
yeah. So around 99 is when the entire world was moving towards Y2K, right? The
yeah,
Y2K bug was starting to bite everyone. The dot com companies, the IT boom that happened there. Obviously, I was also attracted towards it. But I obviously did not have any IT or programming background other than the ops background. I was looking for an organization that could utilize my ops experience, and I could also make the transition from being a chemical engineer to an operations manager. And that's where I got this break from Vetri Software. They were pioneers of IT enabled services during that time. They had started in 1993, headed by a great leader and mentor, Raju Venkatraman. So I joined them in 99 and have not looked back after that. So I've just progressed in the BPO journey thereafter from 99
okay.
to what, to 2023 now, about 23 years now.
Yeah. But again, this is another sea change, right? From the plant and to a service led industry in IT
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
are
absolutely.
worlds apart.
Worlds apart. And here we had the again the difference was at manage a lot of youngsters just come out of college, and that's where we used to hire freshers, right? So with maybe life sciences background or at least a science or mathematics background, because you had to have good aptitude. And then we used to have customized training modules to bring them up to speed with the processes and then take them through the curve. So completely different ball game. But given the fact that I had the basics right, I could adapt faster. Managing change is has always been a challenge, but that is what has brought the fruits as well. So once you adapt to the change and you manage it, then you get to see the fruits. Constantly seeking change has been an endeavor that I've. So when I go into a comfort zone, I become restless.
But can you pinpoint a reason why you chose IT? Was it mainly because of the overwhelming, let's say, impact that IT was creating around that time? Because, I mean, logically, I'm saying if you already had about 6 to 8 years of experience in the chemical industry, most people tend to leverage experience within an existing field rather than move into something all afresh because they say, I don't know enough about this business. So, is there a certain amount of risk taking even while you're on a career path, while you're looking for?
It was a big risk. So I had to consult a lot of people. My father had a lot of acquaintances within the industry, and we met quite a few of them before we took this decision. In fact, I started my C, C++, Java, those kind of programs as well, because I knew if this is going to be the career shift that I was going to make, then I was told that okay, you will need to know all these languages. So basically, they assumed that the only way I could survive is actually doing programming, but obviously I had no aptitude for programming. I
Okay.
was My forte was ops management, people process. That's where I wanted to go, and the the most candid aspect was, despite 8 9 years in the chemical industry, I was not earning well. And this is one area where not just the boom in the industry, but the pay was also. That's
Yeah.
another lucrative option that I had to look at. And to be fair, within 2 years of joining this industry, I built my first house. So you can
Okay.
imagine the kind of monetary benefits that I have got, right,
Right.
because of
Right.
the shift I did. So I think it was a risk worth taking. And
So,
thankfully, I was able to manage and wait through.
okay. So, do you think change happened first in your mind with respect to, I think I need to make a change and then you begin to explore options? Or is it that there is a certain amount of pressure, which is why you respond to it? I'm trying to get a little deeper into how, this
This
transitions are
particular
managed.
change was actually pressure
Okay.
because, like I said, so Tata Chemical 6 years, great. I loved every day. 2 years with Kotari, again, great, as long as the project was initiated. But once the option of going to the factory was given, I did not like it. Then a year as a consultant, right? So it was like on and off. There were days where I had nothing to do, and there were days like where I traveling and doing a lot. Somehow something was not right. I had to settle down in life. It's too early in my career to be doing a consulting role where the remuneration is on and off, right? It is
Mhm.
only used to be
Yeah, that's
basis
true.
the task given. There was no fixed income. So that's the reason that forced me to accept this change.
Okay.
But thereafter, so let's say, so for Vetri Software, that organization became liaison, was taken over. I was there with them for about 5 years. So my tenure and stints have been pretty long, almost every organization. And thereafter, I joined another organization, First Source, where I was there for 6 years. So as you can see, the shift did not happen very frequently thereafter. I was pretty secure.
And
I wanted to make sure whatever trust was enforced on me, I lived up to those, and I was accountable for a lot of growth aspects that were given to me. So I did not want to change just for the sake of changing and a few rupees more.
now, the BPO industry in India has grown by leaps and bounds. There's also
Mhm.
the other side which says that a whole lot of work is routine, mechanical. How do you see this changing? Do you believe that this is one of those things that has a long term kind of thing, or how is it that it's going to play out over the next few years?
So when I started, the only thing that was driving outsourcing to countries like India, Philippines, China was the cost arbitrage. So all these countries were at least 35 40% cheaper at a per hour rate when compared to the US. That was the main reason why work was moving to India offshore, basically.
Okay.
But as things have evolved, as we've got more and more diverse people joining the this industry, our skill
Okay.
sets have also improved. Every organization, BPO organization, maybe started with just the basic scanning or data entry, but then they have moved on up the chain, be it the provider side or the payer side. There are a lot of high skilled resources that. So
Okay.
let's take for example, if you're part of a call center, then there's a certain skill that you need to have, right? Your language skills, your neutral accent, ability to interact with the person on the other side, who the US, and extract information. So that's a niche skill. Similarly, you have something called coding. You actually create a bill using the codes, that the diagnosis procedure code. Again, very very niche skill. So you have something called adjudication of a claim, very niche. So as the years have progressed, the skill set and the process that countries like India have taken up are very very complex in nature as well. And we probably do a better job than actually the US personnel would.
That's amazing. How do you
So
actually recruit for these kind of skills when you have such niche requirement? How do you even begin? Is it that the training process internally?
yeah, it's all about training, right? So yeah, you can probably poach. Have a competitor. I can poach a few good people from him, but that's not going to last you forever unless you have a foundational training program that really nurtures a fresher into becoming a skilled resource. So I think these organizations that I'm talking about have invested a lot in training, building the training curriculum. So the first source, the organization that I joined after Vetri, they spent almost 17,000 hours just understanding what process they should, just creating the training model when they did not even have a customer. So that's the kind of investment I'm talking about, where really build the curriculum and obviously get the right people who have the aptitude to train, right? Not everyone can train. Even if you are a subject matter expert, you should have the ability to train people. So you have to get the right trainers in, you have to get the right content in, and then you have to lay out the module in such a way it becomes easy for a fresher to understand, assimilate. A lot of hands-on experience given before he or she actually goes into the job. And then over the months of experience through mistake proofing, the word that I use often is, obviously you learn only if you make mistakes. As long as you
Yes.
learn from your mistakes and then you can improve upon that, that's when you're mistake proofing and you're becoming better at your job. So those are the aspects.
Okay. Let me take you into slightly one direction that I want to explore a little more is when you start out on the job, you're doing almost everything yourself. You're learning. And then it becomes a point as to how do you begin to train people or build a team where the requirement now shifts from you doing your job to getting something done from others.
Mhm.
So there's a mind shift there. That's one aspect. So I'd
Correct.
like you to spend a little time on how you made the transition from being a person who got the job, who did the job, to a point where you got it done, and first within a small team. And then as the team expanded, what do you think are the changes that you personally underwent?
So to start with, I was actually fortunate that where my first job itself was managing like 40, 50 people.
Okay.
I joined already
Yeah.
as a leader. So I did
Your
not
first
probably,
job. Okay. Right.
yeah, so I was probably fortunate. It was not a individual contributor role. It was more of a leadership role again. I was the shift in charge. But again, you had to learn from those people, right? So I've already explained. But when I moved into BPO again, we had some set spans. So, for example, if you're a team leader, you manage maybe 15. So these are all tried and tested span ratios that were already in place. So if you're a manager, then maybe you manage three team leads, which means you have 45, 50. There are some organizations who create the span basis the revenue managed. There are some that create these spans basis the people to be managed. Again, depending on the skill set of people. So if you have a very high skill set, then spans could be optimized slightly lower. But if you have an average skill set, then you could have higher span. But 1 is to 25 is the best, or the uppermost limit, I would say, for a team leader to manage, because he or she then has to connect with them all through the shift. Even our layout in the BPO industry used to be, it's a cluster, right, of 25, 12 in each row, and then the leader sitting right in the middle. So that's how the clusters were also designed those days, to make sure that each cluster was a team, and 1 is to 25. They were managing the cluster. It was like a home for them, away from home, as a family, so they bonded well, celebrated birthdays, celebrated small successes. Those cultures were like completely different to what I had experienced. So that's the shift I had to make, to adjust to it. And then I learned and I innovated, created more opportunities to celebrate. Fun has become a default value in our industry today,
Okay.
because there's so much stress and pressure at
Yeah.
work that you have to de-stress people from that. You have to literally have a lot of fun. Literally have your hair down, have fun. So that's the kind of culture we built over the years. And as a leader, I have tried to try and emanate and maybe attract some of my leaders who shy away from maybe singing, dancing. So I go down, I sing, I dance, have fun with the people, and it makes the others also emulate. So
Wonderful.
each leader has their own style, but this is how I have managed teams.
Okay.
And you asked
Now,
another
the
question,
yeah, the
as
other
to,
direction. Sorry. Yeah, please continue.
yes, as to how you manage as you grow. So obviously, manager becomes a senior manager, general manager, which means that his or her span improves. The focus should be on governance, dashboards, objectively measuring performance, and you have client SLAs, client targets that you have to meet. So your dashboards, your daily governance, weekly governance is what actually helps you control the game.
Okay. Now, the other thing that I want to look at is your interaction with clients when you're heading delivery.
Mhm.
Uh, it's the biggest problems that get escalated to you. So, how is it that you keep calm, and how is it that you manage? How do you know what needs to be done to handle a crisis?
Yeah, so I think the culture we built, not just me, I think across the multiple organization, is give me the bad news first. So that's the culture we built. So obviously we need to know that we have a problem before the customer tells. So we have to have enough control points, measurement systems in place for us to keep a constant tab on how we perform, whether it is quality, whether it is turnaround time. It has to be. That's why I spoke about the governance, right? So the dashboards have to help you with the right metrics to tell you in advance that, hey, this is going, the trend is not looking right. If this
Okay.
continues, then we're going to fail the SLA. Proactively, you're able to take measures and to prevent failures. But due to some unforeseen circumstance, if there is a failure that happens, then I've seen 9 out of 10 customers love it when you tell them before they realize. You have to be proactive about
So
telling them
you're
that,
telling them I have a problem which I'm
yeah,
sorting.
yeah, you're telling them that, hey, I'm going to fail or I have failed
Okay. Okay.
before they tell me. But there
Okay.
are instances where I'm not, where it is the other way around, where we know that there's something that
Yeah.
we could not measure and their end customer escalated and it comes as a complaint. So those are
Okay.
the instances, few and far between, but predominantly, I think we have enough robust systems in place today where we are able to have a pulse on the system and proactively react. Not react, be proactive and
Respond
correct
and
it,
fix it.
fix it.
There's a nuance on what you just asked. You can read this, Gautam.
Okay, Ganesh is
This is
asking.
asked. Ganesh Kalyankrishnan wants to know about this.
Yeah, so Ganesh, just to answer your question, right? So there, the 40 odd people that I managed were all heads of their workstation. So I had to just go about managing, maybe go visit their workstation, see what basically their job was to look at the process metrics, control parameters, record them. So my job was to make sure that anyone and everyone who's there in my shift at each workstation had their metrics in place, had their control points in place. The pumps were all running, the storage tanks were all adequately managed, the pressure systems are all running. Equipments have to work. I think in a large factory setup, if your process control equipment fail, then you have a serious issue. So that's where you have to be proactive in terms of getting those repaired and all that. That predominantly was my task. I really did not have to get them to work because they were not doing any work. It was all process control, right? So if the pump is running, it's running. It is doing its job. I don't have to manage the pump. I have to manage the person who's manning the pump. It was easy
Yeah.
there. But when I moved to BPO, then I had to literally get the best out of every individual. That's when the span becomes an issue. As a human, you cannot really manage more than 20, 25 itself is a stretch. But if it's really a skilled team, then 1 is to 20 would be the ideal. Not sure if I answered the question.
So within a team, now you have, your core reportees. That is, there's a set of people like who are themselves managing very large teams and stuff like that.
Correct.
So when it comes to rising within an organization,
Mhm.
what are the mental gears that you have to shift?
So the first thing you need to do is succession planning. So obviously you need to make sure someone else is ready to take up your job. That's when you can grow.
Okay.
So let's say if I'm managing a team of 25, someone from within that team has to be ready to manage it in my absence. So I have to groom. So as a leader, it becomes essential that you groom your successor. And it's an unwritten rule. You have to make sure you develop people who are better than you at the job that you're doing. They have to be better than you. It's easier said than done. It takes a lot of mentoring, coaching, delegating effectively, and supporting them if they fail, all that, so that they get the confidence to take their own decision. Once they're ready, obviously, then you can probably expand your span. From one team, now I can manage two teams, and that's how you
Okay.
grow. So it has to be all about finding the right person to do the job that you've been doing, so that you can expand your role.
So, can you tell me about some instances where, let's say, you found a particular difficult situation, and then what was your response? Take us through one of the scenarios. Deepa Ravi is asked is, how do you manage this particular thing when people were working from?
So, yeah, the pandemic has taught us a lot of lessons. First of all, none of us were prepared for the pandemic. Like I said, we have these clusters where we manage the teams. We're all looking
Yeah.
at them face to face, in person. We're used to driving production that way. And suddenly, May 23rd, 2020 happens. You say that you can no longer work in office, go home. So, we've not even factored working from home as part of the IT setup itself. So, it was a lesson for all of us. Obviously, a lot of us stumbled, but I think most of us managed to do what we did. We were We managed to get the systems to the employee homes. We managed to build infrastructure that could connect to every home, and then through that network to the centralized servers, through the servers to the customer system. It all happened within a matter of month. I think maybe by end of April, most of the BPO companies are up and running with almost 60-70% of the staff fully equipped to work from. Of course,
So, how
we
exactly did you go about that? You knew, you looked at the people who were in charge of certain things and told them, or was there a fair amount of understanding with teams which had already gelled within a proper work environment to then go ahead and do things that they had not been required to do earlier?
Yeah, so obviously all of us had to do this weightlifting in the sense literally we
Yeah.
had to pick systems and run. So, and obviously the admin or the IT did not have enough staff to make sure. So, one thing that we did is we sent the systems to each of the employees as and when they were leaving the office. So, they had the system up and running with them. Then, obviously, we set up, that's when all these Zooms and go-to meetings and MS Teams really became valuable, right? Where we could address multiple people at the same time to Zoom session. Help desk was set up, and where people could log in and say, "Oh, this is not working for me. That is not working for." Me. Then the expert will tell them how to get this done. So that's when. So these are the lessons that the pandemic has taught. It taught us that you can actually work better through a hybrid model. I know of some organizations who actually let go of the physical space. They are now
Okay.
happy doing 100% work from home.
Okay.
So they don't have
How
any
did
physical
you
space.
how did you reassure your clients who suddenly didn't have the same access and that they had earlier? And what are the steps that you took to ensure that that you would manage this?
So obviously, the first thing that happened was the force majeure clause came into play, where none of the SLAs were applicable. Right. So obviously, given such a major development, we could not stick to those SLAs. So for some time, maybe 3 months, 6 months, depending on how things were, we got that SLA holiday, which means we really did not have to worry about day-to-day
Okay.
measurements of SLAs. But eventually, obviously, there was a backlog that was building up. Eventually, we had to get rid of the
Right.
backlog and get caught up. So that gave us the breathing time, and we kept assuring. The only way we could assure the customers was through constant communication, daily calls, stand-up meetings, and saying, "Okay, now 30% of the team is up and running, 40% is up and running." And this is the age. So in our business, it's all about claims and how old they are, and the system should tell them, "Okay, this is the oldest claim in the system. This is what we down from the
Okay.
oldest to the youngest. That's what we'll manage. This is the plan for the next week. We don't know what's going to happen next, but these are the people that." So it used to be constant communication, progress every week. As long as we were able to show progress every week and eventually reach a state where I think in both the organizations that I served during the pandemic, we were back to meeting the SLAs within 3 to 4 months. It is just that
Okay.
window that we needed to settle into a complete work from home.
Okay. Now, in terms of the selecting people, which is what I think some of the younger viewers of this podcast will be interested in knowing. So, how exactly do you go about recruiting people, and what is it that people coming into the industry should expect?
Good question. So again, depending on the type of process that we're hiring, right? So
Yeah.
in our typical kind of industry, every organization today is prepared to work on a hybrid mode where you have people working from home as well as it's become an ongoing kind of a BCP scenario where you don't have everyone working. So at least 20 to 30% of the population is always working, and therefore your infra and the firewall, everything is protecting this hybrid model. And we've sold that to our customers. Customers have done the audits, pretty satisfied with what we have set up. That's how. So this is in fact, competition. That's how they lure, right? So, for example, we have competitors who tell our employees saying, "Oh, you asked to work in office for the first 6 months. You can work from home from day one. Come join us. We'll also give you a 15% increment." That's how they lure them. But obviously, when it looks greener from this side, when they go there, they find that it's completely
Yeah.
different.
How exactly do you
Yeah,
recruit?
so the processes are divided based on the skill set. So depending on what kind of skill set we need, there is a minimum requirement to hire. So it could be a life sciences. There could be some processes where we would not hire freshers. We would need experienced people. And there would be processes where we could hire freshers, but with good English speaking skills for the voice process. So that's it. Those are the two or three nuances that you have to take care from a minimum requirement. As long as you get that minimum requirement to hire right, the recruitment team is happy. So they know which source to target, where to pull people. Once the recruitment is done, then each of these process streams has specific training module, right from pre-process to process, and then of course certification, and then they go through a very scientifically structured ramp. So they have to start from zero to, let's say, 10 15 claims per day. That's the goal. Maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It's all well tested out, laid out nicely. Glide path, we call it. Glide smoothly, go up the curve in terms of speed, make sure the focus is on accuracy, get your accuracy right. And that's how they become a steady state resource. So the progression from a ramp to a steady state happens when they've started hitting the regular goals on a daily basis. Thereafter, they're all steady state resources. 1 year into the steady state bucket, they become eligible to become leaders. They go through internal job postings, they go through interview panels. If they're really good, like you said, they become the transition from managing oneself to managing 20 people. And for those young leaders, we have a dedicated training program on how to be a good leader, how to manage people, what are the tricks of the trade, the tips. So that's a continuous learning process.
Now, this the BPO industry is highly processed.
Mhm.
So, is there any room for creativity within this? For people who want a very structured environment where they learn, where they'll do well, is where a BPO is best suited. So, how do people make out before they begin as to whether this is what they are about or they're not?
Yeah, so like I said, so first 2 years you will have to be process driven in this industry to be constantly efficient and effective. So, but there are processes. So again, typically of how the BPO environment is, right? Most of the processes are actually dictated by the customer. So you actually have to
Okay.
work on their system. So there's not much you can do from an innovation or a process
Right.
change. But there are processes where customers outsource and allow you to manage using your own process. There you can do a lot of innovation. You can talk about non-value added steps. You can talk about innovation. You can talk about using technology to improve productivity. Where there is no scope for innovation, there is scope for moving from one function to the other. So, for example, if you are in operation, okay, you say, oh, 2 years in operation bugs me. I want to do. You have the aptitude to teach, you can go into training. If you have the aptitude to, you have the right vision, the right eye, the microscopic lens to actually catch the errors, you move into service quality. If you are good at mentoring, coaching, then we have these green belts and black belt programs where you can become certified quality professional, can drive improvements or processes are bleeding. Okay, you don't want that. You want to go into software development. Okay, if you have the right aptitude, skill set, you can move into software where it's all about innovation, practices, machine learning, AI, you name it, we have it. So it's about the individual where he or she wants to go. But the problem with today's generation is I think they're not clear on what they want to do. They probably are not very sticky in terms of sticking on to one job, building a career. Very few people. Most of them they would jump. The competition
Why
offers them
is
five.
that important? Why is it so hard for people to understand that you will only learn when you spend more time doing something over and over again?
I think just constantly reiterating the fact that you have opportunities to grow here. You really don't have to jump jobs just because someone else is offering a few rupees more, 5,000 more, or 20% more, 30%. Some of them offer obscene 40%. I don't know how they manage. So just to lure people, right? But at the end of the day, he's still a processor. He's not growing in his career as a leader, or he's not taking the next step. Those aspects are some things that we'll have to constantly keep telling our team, where we tell them these are the opportunities. And we need to have a very fair and transparent performance management system where you are really differentiating the performers and the pretenders. So constantly make sure your performers get the reward that they deserve. Unless you have a very the same yardstick to measure people with, and you differentiate. So, okay, you are rated 5, you get 20%. You're rated 1, you don't get any increment. That difference has to be made on performance, objective performance. That happens.
Lovely turn of phrase there, the performers versus the pretenders.
Yeah,
And you're saying some of these because for some people, they are great survivors. The pretenders are great survivors.
great survivors. Yeah, they survive because you're not measuring them, right? they know you're not measuring them and they'll survive. So
Okay.
for us to make sure that the performers are rewarded and the pretenders are sieved off, I think you need to have a very good performance. And I think that's where we've really invested our time in terms of creating these reports, real-time production management, user-level reports, which help our leaders to manage their teams. From the age-old days when everything used to be either pads or Excel, now the system will tell you who's performing, who's. You come in, log in today, you know what you produced yesterday, what was your quality score. Everything is all dashboarded.
For you personally, Gautam, how do you view a career journey? What is your understanding?
Again, this is just me, so I can only speak
Yeah,
about myself, right? So
right.
every time I look at a youngster walking in through our door, I remember my anecdote before my first job. Okay, so I go,
That's never going to disappear. That's like a
yeah,
imprint.
that's going to stay with me. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we make sure that every person walking in gets a sense of belonging, gets a sense of I am respected, I'm needed here. Most organizations, we let the trainers take that role. I think some organizations have now started making sure, at least 4 5 organizations that I know, where some of the senior leaders go talk to these people right at the beginning. First week of joining, you have the senior leaders talking to them, you're telling them, oh, this is the organization, this is where you're going to come in after you complete training. Rest assured, we'll take care of you. That's a lot of important steps to make sure they become entrenched and anchored, right? Otherwise, they're like left out as orphans, don't know what's going to happen next. A trainer has his or her job to do. Okay, I have these modules to cover. He's not going to worry about engaging and telling them about the future. That needs to come from leaders who are going to manage them in the future. So those are some aspects that are very, very important. So as a leader, that's how we have evolved.
okay.
Right from managing oneself, trying to manage others, trying to balance between people and tasks. It's not easy. There are some very tough decisions one has to take as we go up the ladder. But I have shied away from laying off people as much as possible. Try to accommodate as long as they're performers in various processes in my previous job as well to ensure that we continue their livelihood. For most of them, this is their livelihood. At the same time, we have to look at cost, we have to look at profits, we have to make sure that we are right
All of
staff.
those have to time
All
as
this stuff
well.
has to
Yes.
be a balance. It's a constant balance. I always tell my team it's the triangle, right? It has to be equilateral. So people, business, customer. It has to be equilateral. There could be instances
Okay.
where it could stretch and become an obtuse triangle because our customer needs everything. At any cost, you have to make sure SLAs are met. People take a hit, business takes a hit. Then suddenly there's pressure on profitability. You have to cut costs, you maybe cut salaries, cut transport. Then again, people take a hit. Then so you have to really make sure that whatever decisions, it's not easy, but
Yep.
as much as possible, try and make sure customer, people, business are all equally balanced as much as possible. That's the only way to
Get it
continue
all
this
done.
journey
Yeah.
without really getting hurt
Wonderful.
from.
But are there any closing thoughts that you would have for young people who are evaluating their own skills and seeing where they'll be happy? How do they begin?
Youngsters today are very clear on what they want to do. Plus, when I just completed 12th. The only options I had was either be an engineer or be a doctor. That's it. Okay. So obviously biology was not my cup of
Yeah.
tea. So I took up
Yeah.
engineering. But today, even before they start going to 11th, they know clearly what they. There are almost 440 professional streams available when compared to
Okay.
the two that I am aware of in the science stream itself. So
Okay.
then you have commerce, then you have mathematics, you have statistics, you name it. So there's a wealth of opportunity available today. Kids today know exactly what they want to do.
And
So, but they need some capital, right? They want some independence. They need some capital. So maybe for some, BPO becomes a easy way to earn some good money for 1 year, 2 years, and then use that capital they built to go into a career. So
right.
this is where it becomes important to make sure you hire the right people. Right? So you need to see through
Right.
the it's a highly qualified person, he or she may not stick. You may have
Okay.
higher attrition. So there has to be a balance. But yes, as long as everyone's aware of what they want to do, and if BPO is the career that they want to take, and within BPO, like I've mentioned, there are so many opportunities available. You can really build a very good career.
Great. So just to summarize, Gautam, from losing all your all important files on that train from Bombay to heading one of the largest delivery teams in a BPO that caters to some of the most finicky medical establishments in the US, because that process, I've been told, is extremely hard to get.
Yes.
It's been a long journey. So thank you for taking us through each of the process. And I think you broke down a lot of the steps in terms of how you made the transition from chemical engineering to the decisions that you made on getting into the BPO, and what your strengths were and how each one of those strengths were leveraged over time. Thank you. It's been wonderful talking to you. Watch out for our next episode. Follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you, Gautam.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much.
I'm ending.
You too. Bye.
Thank you.